I
This
think we all got
conference
the
will
gist.
now be recorded.
Okay, now it's being recorded. Cool. So, hey, I am Scott, and I want to thank all you for your time today. Time is a gift, and the fact that you're willing and want to spend a little bit of time today, really just having a conversation about what does it mean to serve. And no one knows that better than you and me. I mean, we serve. I'm wearing this outfit today. Um, this last weekend, I was in my camouflage stuff because of my military service. And so Vistas and AmeriCorps volunteers and just we are so similar in our path in that we choose to serve. And what I was asked when Kay approached me and said, "Hey Scott, you have some experience with boards. Would you mind kind of talking to our group about board service and what that represents?" And I said, "Sure, but if I do it, I'd much rather have just a general conversation than just throw a bunch of slides at you." And I'm happy to share with you resources and things like that of sort of where information lies. But a lot of this is going to be kind of based on my experience as well as best practices. So you may have heard in the intro that I'm the CEO of a nonprofit myself. I have a board of directors. They're a very influential board of individuals, C-suite, director level individuals from around the state of Michigan. And they're very politically connected, they're very operationally connected, and I'm blessed to be able to work with many fine individuals as the CEO of the Michigan Israel Business Accelerator. What my job is in the civilian side is to promote economic development and growth opportunities to create jobs in Michigan. And we do that between Michigan and Israel, and that's because Israel, if you don't know, has the highest number of startups per capita in the world. So for a country that's so small, it's a little bit less than 10 million people, they have the highest number of startups. And it's amazing. It's an amazing country. I get to go there frequently. But the startup ecosystem there is pretty cool. And so Michigan recognized that and just a number of years ago and said, we're going to create an organization, a nonprofit dedicated to really capturing some of that and some of that energy, some of that passion, bottling it up and bringing it over to Michigan and create jobs. And that's what I get to do. And I have a great board of directors that helps me do that. I'm very connected to individuals in state government. You heard about my background. If you were paying attention, I used to work in the executive office for a former governor. I'm friends with a lot of the folks who are in the current administration just because I came to know them. I was a bridging strategy from the outgoing administration to the current administration. And so much of what we do when we serve is exactly that. It's a verb, it's a noun, and it means something. And then when I'm not doing stuff with the Michigan Israel Business Accelerator, as I mentioned, I'm also in the military, and I'm blessed to be able to continue to serve. I'm not a big proponent of kind of bragging about my rank, but it is an important rank. As a brigadier general, I'm responsible for about 8,000 people, and they're wonderful men and women that live all over the state, and I have the blessing of serving them. That is my approach. Servant leadership is a big part of how I roll. And what does it mean if you're servant leaders? If you're a true servant leader, it means you get a tremendous amount of satisfaction out of serving others before serving yourself. And I think that's what connects us here on this call is all of you are volunteers and you serve. So what I'm going to talk about today, Kay asked me to talk about is what does it mean to serve, and specifically maybe even serve on a board. And for some of you may be looking to maybe figure out how you can contribute. What does it mean to serve on a board of directors? How do you even get on a board of directors? And what does that opportunity look like? So I'm going to tell you a story, actually, is sort of how I landed on my first board. And that's, again, I'm a kind of a storyteller guy. I speak in analogies. And so, but if I lose you today and you have a question, here's the rules of the road. The reason I asked for you to have your cameras on it, if you didn't mind, was just so that if you raise your hand, I can see you. And then so if you have a question, raise your hand, and that way I can understand. I'll pause for a second, and I'll call on you. That way I know. So that's kind of the request why I was asking for the cameras, and I figured if we were going to spend some time together, you could at least sort of see who I am, and I could see you. Because again, I say this frequently: time is a gift, and the fact that you're willing to give me the gift of your time, I don't want to squander that. So here we go. So here's how I landed on my first board. I was involved as a member of a leadership development group in Southeast Michigan. The group's called Leadership Oakland, and the class, when you go through this leadership development class, it's about a 10-month program. And for some reason, they saw fit to elect me as their class president. So I was blessed for that leadership opportunity. I was the class president from a leadership perspective, and it was really, really nice to be elected and selected by your peers. So I was presenting at one of our events that we have, which was essentially monthly, and someone walks up to me, a complete stranger, and says, and puts her hand out and says, "Hi, you don't know me, but I want you on my board." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm Scott Hiipakka, and who are you?" And what started out as a casual conversation, then it turned into a series of meetings because I said, "Hey, look, very nice to meet you." And this woman's name was Chris Marshall, and she is the president and CEO of a nonprofit based in Southeast Michigan called Winning Futures. And she's turned out to be a dear friend of mine. So I joined her board after a series of vetting because I wanted to understand who are they, what do they do, how do they contribute, what are their board financials, what is their mission, what would be my duties and expectations, and these were things I wanted to ask. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is what is the responsibility of a board member? And what are their duties based upon the role that you might fulfill? What are the expectations of a board and a board member and that? And then we'll walk through just sort of that conversation. And I've learned it firsthand as a board member. I became a board chair for Winning Futures. And now I'm the CEO of a nonprofit. And so now I'm involved in choosing who my board members should be. And grooming those potential members of my board. So if that's cool with everybody, unless someone else wants me to talk about something else, that's kind of directionally where I was going to go. So is everybody kind of good with that? And here's your first chance to interact. If you're cool with it and you like that concept, wave your hand. Okay, cool. Okay, so for the most part, folks are waving their hand. Thank you for that. And so that's what we'll kind of do. So first, what does it mean to serve? There's three kind of legal elements associated with being on a board. And for me, it's pretty intuitive, but you got to care, you got to be loyal, and you got to be obedient. And those are sort of the three legal duties for a nonprofit board member. And I'll break those down for you in simple Scott speak. But you got to care, you got to be loyal, and you got to be obedient. And what does that mean, right? So first, let's talk about the caring, right? You got to be connected to that board. And what does that mean? And the thing that you got to understand is that because we're all people, right? So boards are a lot like human beings. The board grows. It grows over time. And what kind of board are you thinking about growing or being a part of? Are you joining a new board, or are you joining a board that's really mature and that has a lot of strengths and a lot of different really important people involved on it? A board and I'll give you an example, like the United Way. The United Way is a very mature board, versus if you're joining a less mature board that maybe it's a nonprofit that's just starting. So it depends, right? So boards are like, the board's like human beings in that they grow. And then you as a member of that also grow. And that's what's really fun and interesting about your role. Because people know if you're a new board member that you're going to need to be groomed a little bit. And you're going to need to kind of grow in your role which is really important. And so for me personally, when I served on Winning Futures, and as an example, I started out as just a regular board member, and I served on that board about 6 years. Um, and so for a part of that evolution, I was a regular board member, and then they asked me to serve a couple of years into my time in the program. They asked me to become the vice chair of the board, and then they asked me to become the board chair. And one of my passions, I'm a passionate guy, I can't help it, and it's just kind of who I am, but I care about getting stuff done. And it's a mission of mine. If I'm going to give my time, I want to help. And I'm a roll up my sleeves and kind of get dirty guy. I don't just want to come in and have sort of just nice meetings where everyone sort of talks, but there's nothing really being done. I believe that we need to be doing things because as a board member, I feel like that's my goal, is to contribute, right? I care. And so I think that's, for me, that's really important. That's one of the pillars, right? Care. And because board members are like human, you have to kind of, being a human, as a human, all of you are in it every day. You're all in, right? You live every day. You have family, you have friends, you have a job, you volunteer, there's things that you do. You're all in. And you're passionate, and that's what makes you special. But the key is recognizing, if you're looking at a board, what kind of board are you joining? So at the time with Winning Futures, I was joining a board that was more of an advisory board, and I was brought in to help kind of flip that switch from making Winning Futures an advisory board into a no kidding, roll up your sleeves and make it a fundraising board. We had a mission to expand the organization. And Chris and I, her name was Chris Marshall, she was the CEO and president. We talked a lot about what would my role be. And again, because I care, I really wanted to ask some very direct questions. So that to me was I spent time with her understanding what that board was looking like. Martin Luther King has a really good quote about what it means, to serve. And so, his quote is, everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics and physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. And that's a quote by Martin Luther King Jr., and I think that's a really important quote because it speaks to what it means to care. And I think if you guys are interested in serving on a board, and again, you care because you wouldn't be here today maybe if you didn't care, I think that's special. And I think it speaks to who you are. When you think about now the responsibilities of a board, and this ties to, it transitions from care. The next one I said I was going to talk about was loyalty and obedience. So when you think about those two things, right, those tie to the word loyalty sort of invokes a certain kind of emotion and a thought in your head. When you're loyal to the organization, that means you believe in those responsibilities and you live them. And so those responsibilities of a board member kind of revolve around three areas. You need to help the organization from a planning perspective, so planning and helping that, right? And then that also comes to an execution side too, right? Because not only do you have to plan, you have to ensure effective planning. Sometimes you have to roll up your sleeves and get dirty. So the third responsibility then within this loyalty construct is helping with maybe the mission, vision, and values. It's important, and I do this in my board every year. We do an annual strategic planning meeting. And we plan out 5 years, we look out 5 years, but we lock down the next year in that annual meeting that we do. So when we first built our strategy, we looked out 5 years, and it's a rolling planning meeting, or a rolling kind of, framework. So we look out 5, but we lock in the next year. And we do that annually every October. That's what we do. Doesn't mean every board has to do that. But when we do that process, we always examine our mission, our vision, and our values. And how those three things come together are pivotal for how the organization thinks and how the organization feels. And because boards are like humans, they grow and they evolve, and they're comprised of humans. Humans make decisions principally on two very basic things: how we think and how we feel. You might say to yourself, I feel hungry, but I don't think I should eat 80,000 cookies right now, even though I have them from the Girl Scouts. They dropped off 40 boxes at my house. That wouldn't be good. So I feel like that would taste good, but I don't think it's a good idea. I use that silly example just because it's important. Humans make decisions on how they think and how they feel. And your values of the organization are tied to how you think and how you feel. The vision and the mission are tied to that. So again, so that's kind of the second responsibility. And those two things really pull together into this overall organizational identity of the organization. So if you were to take sort of this effective planning and mission, vision, and values and draw arrows down into this one little circle down here, and that's this organizational identity that you're a part of, and that you as a board member have a responsibility for cultivating and helping manage. You have a legal responsibility, again, caring, loyalty, and obedience. And that organizational identity then is tied to this obedience piece. And obedience, not necessarily in like a negative way, it's a good way. Like you sign up to do it. You're obedient to the mission, you're obedient to the vision, and you're obedient to the values. And those things are really, really important. Depending upon the type of board you're on, your role on that board can vary. You might be in what they sort of refer to potentially as the executive committee. And the executive committee, at a minimum, there's always a board chair or president, and then there's a secretary and a treasurer. Those are the three minimal positions associated with the board. But it depends. You might have a fundraising committee chair. You might have a strategic planning committee chair, and a number of folks that raise their hand to serve on these various committees. I serve on committees, and because I'm on another board, you may have heard it when Kay was reading my bio. So I serve on committees as a member of a board, and but I have my board members in my role in my Monday through Friday job. I have committees on my board. So, and everyone kind of rolls up their sleeves and we do things together. And I'm a big fan of everyone just kind of grabbing a paddle and rowing. And I think that's a easy way to kind of think about a board. When you join a board and you look at that board and you think about what it means for the people who are on that board, do they care, are they loyal, and are they obedient to the mission, vision, and values? And so, because you may have a role of having to do fundraising. Do you have the skills on the board to do fundraising? That's a question, right? And you have to look at yourself and say, okay, well, the United Way is an example. They do fundraising, right? They have to fundraise for their specific activities. Seeing a lot of boards that do fundraising, and that's a pretty common thing. So you kind of got to know what you're getting into early on. A big thing for me when I was looking at my service on a board was who was the leadership? What was their personality? For me, it was important that I had a good fit with that individual. I clearly understand what made them tick, if you don't mind that expression, what made them tick. And because, again, I care. I wear my emotions externally. I think you guys are starting to pick up on that vibe. I'm not afraid to communicate. If someone says, hey, Scott, what do you think? I will generally say, well, here's what I think. Sometimes they won't even ask me what I think, and I might volunteer what I think. I believe that that's part of, if you're going to serve, you should be comfortable communicating what your beliefs are to support the organization. Again, through those pillars, caring, loyalty, and obedience. So, but you got to understand, you got to ask yourself, why am I joining a board? do I want to do that stuff? Do I want to be in that executive committee? Do I want to serve on a subcommittee? Maybe I want to lead one of the committees. Those are all choices. I think you just have to sort of really look at, what does the organization have? What can I do to add value to the organization? And is it right for me? And those are no one can answer those questions except for you. But I would encourage you to sort of think about those things as they all tie into being a good board member. As you think about, this again, I said this caring, this loyalty, and this obedience. What I didn't throw in front of it yet was what that means when you think about duty. Because technically speaking, it's a duty of caring. It's a duty of loyalty, and it's a duty of obedience. And duty is a verb. It means you do. You do something. And I think that's what you really have to think about is what does it mean when you think about that duty of caring, the duty of loyalty, and the duty of obedience, and what does it mean to you? Because ultimately you got to understand and I said this early on, what does this organization do? And when Chris approached me and did this, Scott, I want you on my board. I know you don't know me. It's like, okay, Chris, nice to meet you, but I have no idea what your board does, what your organization does. But I was so excited when the more I learned about it, they help kids. They help kids. They help, and some of these kids are underprivileged, others are not underprivileged, but it helps provide kids a path. And for me, and it does this by providing business mentors for kids in schools. And business mentors go into the schools and they educate the kids in schools. So, and it becomes part of that school's curriculum. So I could completely see the success model of that. And quite honestly, the more I learned about it, I was shocked by how well adopted this was by the school districts that were using it already. And so it was kind of cool. So I really got into it because I could see myself being a part of something that was helping kids, because I'm a firm believer in investing in our youth. And from the standpoint, as I look around the screen here, I think I'm probably a few years older than the majority of you here. But that doesn't always represent everybody who's a volunteer in AmeriCorps or Vista. I think that's the beauty of the program, is that people choose to serve at different times in their life, and it's awesome. So, and they do it because they just want to grab an oar. They want to grab an oar and they want to paddle. And I think those things that makes them want to do that are sort of the same things with people who want to serve on a board. They have a duty. They recognize that duty, and it's in their hearts and it's in their minds, and they want to tie that together through caring, loyalty, and obedience. Things that are important to always understand on a board. There almost always will be a certain amount of meetings you have to attend. And if you don't, then you're sort of in jeopardy of missing too many meetings, right? Because are you really demonstrating loyalty and obedience if you're not there? Are you participating in the strategic planning process, right? Or are you just showing up and like, oh yeah, whatever, blah, blah, Are you really, at that point, are you really adding value? That's a question, right? So why are you there? And so when you look at that, you gotta say, okay, is this meaningful to me? Does it meet my personal mission? And that's why that Winning Futures thing for me was really cool, because it was meaningful. Like, it was helping people, and it was making an investment in our youth. And our youth are the future of the state and the future of this nation. So I'm willing to make that investment of time and money. That's the other part of this, when I talked a little bit about fundraising. And as board members, you will very likely be required to make a personal contribution to the organization. But let's ask ourselves why. Well, I think it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. If you're out there asking, if you're helping doing fundraising as a board member, and you're sitting down, and I'm sitting down with Kay as an example, and I'm asking Kay, hey, would you be willing to make a contribution to my organization? And Kay would say, Scott, you know what, I'm interested, I'd like to learn more, but let me ask you this. You're a board member, right? And I would say, yes. And then she would say, okay, do you personally contribute to the financial wherewithal and the sustainability of your organization? And I want to be able to say, yes, I do, because I commit to it my time and a little bit of my pocketbook. And those two things right there are pretty significant and strategic, because as a board, the leader of that board, whether you're the board chair or whomever, or the president and CEO, it's very powerful when the board chair, the president, and CEO can say 100% of my board members financially contribute to the lifeblood of the organization. Not only do they commit their time, they commit their financial resources. Now, what Kay didn't ask me, and she won't, well, how much did you contribute, Scott? And that's because everybody's situation is different. So usually when you join a board, it's not always the case. Some boards, you'll have a minimum contribution level. That's not always the case. Some boards, just you need to contribute in some way, some financial measure. And that varies from board to board. So other expectations, just again, serving on a subcommittee, participating in events. You want to be an advocate for the organization when there's in between board meetings. You want to be you want to be a trumpet. You want to talk about the great things that your organization is doing. That's an important thing. You want to be an advocate for the organization. You want to demonstrate your loyalty to the organization. And that's important. Think of it almost as an ambassadorship, like you are an ambassador for the organization. The thing to keep in mind is you're not a staff member, though. You're not a full-time staff member. You're a volunteer. So you always have to blend. You got to be careful that what you're doing isn't getting into the full-time responsibilities of the staff, if the organization has a full-time staff, right? So, if the organization has a president and CEO or an executive director, sometimes depending upon how the organization is structured, they'll either have a president and CEO or they'll have an executive director. Me, I'm the CEO of my nonprofit. We have a board chair, we have a treasurer, and we have a secretary. That's it for the executive committee. But my board doesn't really get into the weedies of my full-time staff. That's up to me. And if one of my board members tried to kind of get into my full-time staff, I would be like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's my job. I need you, board member, to do this, this, and this. And I would realign their expectations because that's what I'm supposed to do. I run the full-time Monday through Friday. The board is exactly that. They serve to support the organization. And they always want to keep that best interest of the organization on the forefront. And the best thing that I always love is when a board member thinks that they've come up and they've sort of done what they wanted to do, and it's time for them to rotate off. When they raise their hand and say, Scott, it's time for me to rotate off, I love that. Because that's them being self-aware and they've been on the organization. And so I think that's for you as you're thinking about joining a board. If for some reason there's something in the board you don't like, you raising your hand and saying, you know what, maybe this isn't the right thing for me to do, as opposed to taking kind of a square peg and a round hole and trying to jam that thing in there, and it's just uncomfortable. Why do that, right? So the right fit, the right tenure for your board members, all that really matters. Don't overstay your welcome. How many folks remember our former governor, Governor Snyder? Show of hands. Yep, good. Okay. So I used to work for him, right? I used to work for him in my role in the executive office. I landed in state government as a result of the Flint water crisis because I was called to serve. I was called to serve in my military capacity. And so what started out for me as a military order to support the governor's office and the residents of Flint actually resulted in them saying, Scott, we'd like you to work full time here because you care so much about helping the people of Flint. And I did. I mean, it just became personal to me to help build the concepts and the response and how we were going to just help support the people of Flint. Now, again, people may have their own political opinions about things, and that's okay. You're entitled to those by all means. But my purpose was serving the state and helping Flint. But the reason I brought up Governor Snyder is because he used to be on my board. He was a volunteer on my board, and which is kind of interesting, right? Having the former governor on your board. And he just kind of rose his hand and said, okay, Scott, it's time for me to rotate off, because he didn't want to overstay his welcome. So these are examples of just expectations that you may see in the organization itself. You may not. It depends on the organization itself. It's all predicated on you and the board. What's your mission? Your personal mission. What's passionate to you? What makes you feel like you're going to dedicate your time? Because I started out the conversation, time is a gift. And your time is a gift. And a really good board chair is going to know that. A really good executive director or president, CEO is going to know that. And the thing about me with my board, I'm very sensitive about their time. I only come knocking if I need something from them or I want to give them an update. So like what I do is I publish a monthly report every month to my board about here's what happened in the last month. I keep them updated through LinkedIn. We have our own little Michigan Israel Business Accelerator LinkedIn page. We have a website. But on my LinkedIn page, like I was in Abu Dhabi, February 19th to the 26th, attending this huge international conference. And I said to my board, hey, if you want to see something, if you want to lens into what's happening here, take a look at our LinkedIn page. That way I wasn't bombarding them with text messages, right? They don't really want to get a bunch of text messages with a 9-hour time difference, because that's what it was. It's a 9-hour time difference. So I gave them a mechanism to stay engaged and to see some of the things I was doing by leveraging an existing thing that we had through our LinkedIn page. So because I wanted to, again, I didn't want to bother them, but I wanted them to see the success that we were having while we were at this international conference. And I wanted them to have a sense of ownership and pride in those things that we were doing. But a good president and CEO will respect your time and will want you to provide advice and wisdom and be willing to grab an oar when they say, okay, it's time to row the boat. And they will do that. And they should do that because that's their job. Or you may say, I'm going to join this nonprofit that's brand new, and we're going to help write the charter and the bylaws, and we're going to do all that stuff together, and that's cool. And there's all kinds of resources online. A good source that you could go to if you're looking for information about boards is called Board Source. It's one word, Board Source, and you can go there. There's books out there. Oh, and by the way, that's boardsource.org if you want it. There's different websites about fundraising. There's different councils about how to sort of run nonprofits, and there's websites for this. You can Google all these things. Like, there's so many different tools out there. What I've given you today, and really the last 38 minutes, is just the world according to Scott, and what my experiences have been, because I'm really a person of service. I believe in service. I believe in serving others before I serve myself, and I love it. Whether I'm a uniform guy wearing my military uniform, I serve. In my current role, wearing this outfit today, I'm serving. I'm creating jobs in Michigan, and in my nonprofit life, where I serve now on a board that supports leadership development in Michigan. That's one of the boards I'm on. I serve. We had a call this morning talking about a program that we do for high school kids to support their professional development. That's one of the working groups I'm on. So I serve, and I love it. So I'm going to stop there because I covered a lot of ground, and I want to open up the floor for questions or comments or feedback or anything you want to ask me. I'm an open book. I got nothing to hide. If I don't know the answer, I'll either tell you I don't know it and I'll try to get you the answer. Or if you want me to try to connect you to somebody, I've got a pretty decent Rolodex. Depending upon what you might be looking for, I might be able to help. So, but the thing I would warn you, be careful what you wish for. You might just get it. So I'll stop there. If you want to unmute yourselves, ask me any questions you want. Free floor to whoever wants to go first.
Hi, my name is Kira. I have a question.
Hi, Kira.
Hi. So you talked about loyalty and just like value in your board members. And so I serve at Detroit PAL, and I'm currently working with our Youth Voice Council. And they're doing a revamping. So they're building up their members and picking up positions and things like that. And so we're struggling with keeping the youth that currently hold roles accountable for, showing up to meetings, participating when they don't come to meetings. So, what advice would you have that I can give to them as far as like how to hold your peers accountable when you're trying to like get things done and like recreating this council?
Yeah, yeah. So first, peer-to-peer leadership can be really difficult sometimes, particularly if you don't have a lot of experience in it. And so trying to get your peers to do something because everyone comes from different backgrounds, different styles of work ethic. And so I think, Kira, and I want to thank you for your question. It's always difficult to be the first person to ask a question. So thank you for being a leader. So I think in this space, my advice is going to be based on a series of questions. So work with me here for a second. The first question I would ask is, how easy is it for people to participate? Are you making it easy for them to participate? And if you can say yes to that, then the second question I would ask is, why are those individuals not participating? Is it because they truly don't want to be there? And if they don't want to be there, then you don't want to force them because then it's not a good match, right? It's got to be the gears got to work, right? The gears in the watch, the gears in the car. Otherwise, when you grind gears, it's never good. The engine gets mad, whatever, blah blah, it just doesn't work. So you got to get the right fit in the gears, and if those things aren't working, sometimes you got to just start fresh, and that's okay, right? It's okay. There are some folks. That's why it's really important for, you know some people are conflict averse and they don't want to necessarily raise their hand and say, it's time for me to leave, or I know I'm not really being a good participant, or whatever else, right? Sometimes they might need a gentle nudge and they might need a soft exit. So the third question I would offer to you is have you given them a way out so they don't feel embarrassed? Because maybe that's just why they're hanging on, because they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to let you down, right? They don't want to let anybody down, but they need an out. And if you were to just sort of have one-on-one conversations and say, hey, look, we notice you haven't been participating. Is there something we can do to change the environment so you might participate more? And if they say, you know what, I'm just really busy. That's it. Okay, you know what? Thank you. I totally appreciate the fact that you're busy. We all have things going on, and maybe now's not the right time for you to be on this team, on this council. So I want to thank you for your service to this council. You extend your hand, you shake their hand, and then you say, you know, in the future, if you want to come back to us, we'd love to have you explore that opportunity. If indeed that's genuine, maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to send them on their way and it's time for them to go. So that's just it's a life cycle, right? It's that thing I said early in the discussion. I mean, boards are like humans; they grow, they evolve, right? I see a young one just popping up on the screen, and that's awesome. That's you've got different people, different stages of their life, and that's a board, different stages of their life, and their evolution and their growth. Does that answer your question, Kira? Okay.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Yep, sure. Who else?
I've got a question. I'm wondering if there are any parallels between your military service and your service on boards, and if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So first, can you do me a favor and pronounce your first name?
Yes, Micah.
Micah. Okay, cool. With the last name like mine, Hiipakka, I have no room to be screwing up people's names, right? I mean, because people call me Scott Hiipakka, Hiipakka. I mean, some people have asked me if I'm Hawaiian, and I'm like, really? I'm pale and I got red hair. I sure don't look Hawaiian to you, but they're like, well, I didn't know. So anyway, but so to your question, do I see a parallel? And again, I want to thank you for your question. Do I see a parallel? Yeah, for me, because I'm, as you guys, if you can't tell, I'm a person of passion. I wear that passion externally, and I wear it in all of my roles as a father, as a husband, um, as the CEO of my nonprofit, in my military world. I'm known as a passionate guy. I care, and so I think the tie that binds for me um, is those three things, those three duties I talked about, right? Those three things I have, and those became inculcated into me so many years ago. And the more I got fed, the more I wanted to eat. I'm all about caring. I'm all about loyalty, and I'm all about obedience. And obedience doesn't mean, by the way, let me frame this. It doesn't mean just accepting everything. It's okay to say, hey, hold on a second, I want to challenge the thinking here. It's funny, in one of my boards that I'm involved in, the executive director of the organization, he always, when I raise my hand, he's generally like, oh no, here comes one of Scott's, they call them thought grenades. And I roll out these thought grenades in these board meetings because I think it's important to just really challenge group thinking. Sometimes people have a tendency to just sort of do the group think thing. And everyone's like, oh yeah, that's great, right? That's great. It sounds great. There's a vignette. There's a vignette out there. It's called The Road to Abilene. If you Google it on YouTube, you can watch it. But I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of this thing. So it's a family. They're sitting on their porch. It's like they're in Texas or somewhere where it's really hot, and they're sitting on the porch and they're thinking to themselves, God, it's hot outside. So they're having this conversation. It's a family. It's his mom and dad, the kids sort of over there, and they're talking, and the mom's fanning themselves, the dad's fanning themselves. They're on their rocking chairs on the porch, and they're like, yeah, it's hot. It's really hot outside. And someone says, maybe we should go to Abilene for ice cream and lemonade or something like that for ice cream. And someone else says, yeah, that could be good. And then someone else pipes in, and so now I'm in the movie. I'm kind of fanning my face right now, right? So I'm role playing. And someone else says, yeah, but the air conditioning's not working in the car. Yeah, but ice cream sure would be good. And there's this back and forth. And next thing you know, the video cuts, and it cuts to they're in the car. And everyone in the car is mad. No one's happy that they're going to Abilene. No one wanted to go in the first place. They didn't want to go. But no one stepped in and said, let's just not go. It turned into this group think thing. No one really wanted to go spend an hour or 2 hours in a car to go to Abilene to experience the hot. No one really wanted to do that. By the time they got to where they were going, it was horrible. They were all fighting. It just wasn't a good thing. And that speaks to the value of not being afraid to just kind of raise your hand and say, hey, I don't want to go to Abilene. That's not how I don't want to do that. That's not, and it's okay to kind of be that guy or gal once in a while and throw that sort of thought grenade into the room and see what happens. And my board really appreciates that about me, by the way. Like, and in my full-time role, I do that with my staff all the time, where sometimes they'll have this thing, and I'll be like, hold on a second, guys, why are we doing this? And I'll challenge. I have an expression. I say it all the time. Think big and think different. I say this all the time in my civilian and military capacities. I like to think big and I like to think different. The expression of we've always done it that way is not a reason to continue to do something the same way if you don't think it's the right thing to do. So I'm a huge believer in thinking big and thinking different. And I say it all the time. If you ask my board or my staff, what are one of the most common things I say, or my military colleagues? Oh yeah, Hiipakka always says, think big and think different. And and I try to do that in my just everything I do with my kids even. Don't be afraid to think big and think different. I'm the proud father of two great kids. I have a 20-year-old daughter. She's a junior at the University of Michigan, and I have a high school senior. And I didn't do a good job introducing myself, by the way. I jumped right into this thing, and shame on me for not telling you who I am as a human, because that's really what makes me tick. My wife's a band teacher. We live in Milford, Michigan. If you know where that is, it's western Oakland County, along I-96, heading out to Lansing, kind of. And my son's a high school senior, and he just selected his next adventure. He's decided he's gonna go off to college, and he's gonna go off to Indiana University to the Kelley School of Business. Is what his next chapter is when he graduates in the spring. So he'll be a freshman in college. So that's old, or that makes me feel really old, too, by the way, which is personally vexing for me. But, all right, so that's a long answer to your question. I know it was, but it's for me, it's those three duties: caring, loyalty, and obedience. I live them every day.
So I have a question. And that is, in many situations when I'm in a nonprofit, I often hear the president of the nonprofit say, well, I've asked my board to do this and they voted it down. So what is the balance of power? So as you have described it, when a board picks up something and goes with it, they're very passionate. But if the president doesn't feel like the organization should be moving in that direction, how does the power, what's the influence there? Who wins? Or is that the analogy you gave about being in the car and going, where did you say, Albuquerque, and nobody wants to go?
Abilene.
Abilene.
Yeah, it's the road to Abilene. So yeah, so I've not been in that position where my board wholeheartedly believes something that is just diametrically different than me. I haven't had that happen. I think if I was the president, in my role, now there are times when the board gets a vote, right? So like financials, the board gets a vote. I'm only authorized to spend a certain amount of money before I have to go to I have to go to my executive committee, and I need, my treasurer, my board chair. Between the two of us, then we're authorized to spend another sort of certain amount of money. And then over and above that, then it requires a board vote. And the entire board has to agree to throw financial resources at whatever it is that I might be proposing, or they might be proposing. So, there's been some times when in my past life as a board member or a board chair, we always haven't agreed on stuff. We haven't always seen eye to eye, and that's okay. To me, Kay, it's okay. I think ultimately I work, although my board doesn't like it when I say this, but I kind of work for them, even though I'm the full-time guy and they feel like they work for me. But, I have a boss. It's 20 board members, if you want to kind of frame it that way. I have 20 board members for my bosses, but they don't think of themselves that way. We have a tremendous degree of respect for each other. As a matter of fact, I have a board meeting on Friday, and I just pushed out the board packet yesterday afternoon, so they have all week to review it. We usually actually push it out the Friday before, so they have the weekend to go through it if they want to. But we had a technical glitch on our end, so we had to wait to push it out. So that went out yesterday afternoon, and the board has all week to review it. And I think part of that's just the contract I have with them. I don't there's never too much daylight, Kay, between me and my board. And that's because I don't allow there to be a lot of daylight there, right? There's not a lot of separation between my thinking and their thinking because I make sure I'm close to them and I make sure they're close to me. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Anyone else with questions? Scott? Okay, Scott, thank you so much for doing this for us. And I have to say, a lot of the information that you shared works well beyond being a board member. Some of the situations in which you describe and you ask yourself, what am I doing here? What am I going to contribute to this organization? And you can also ask yourself, if I'm in a growth mode, what can I get out of it? So I think it can be a two-way street as well. Even though you're dedicated to this board, it's a learning opportunity for everyone. And I think, as I said on the board with Scott at Winning Futures for a short term, and I think that Chris is dynamic at what she does, and that is why that organization is so strong and it continues to grow. The lady is dynamite. I got to give it to her. So with that, anything else?
If you guys want, here's my cell phone. If you want to take it down, you can call me or you can email me. But my email was on the invite that Kate put out, but I'll give it to you one more time. So first, here's my email. It's my first initial S and then my last name. So it's SHIIP, as in like Peter, AKKA. I'll give it to you one more time. SHIIPAKKA @gmail.com. That's my personal email. Phone is 248-303-4618. If I can be of assistance to you, let me know. Like I said, I'm not afraid to grab an oar and paddle a boat. I think that's part of what makes us great as people, and I genuinely care. And my hope is you do too. So thank you for the gift of your time today. Again, time is a gift. Thank you for the gift of your time and for participating. Well, I want to thank those individuals that asked questions as well. Special shout out to you guys. So thank you. I'm going to sign off, Kay, unless you or anyone else has anything for me.
We're all set. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.